They laughed at her in broad daylight. A 17-year-old girl barefoot under the burning African sun, carrying two crying babies while struggling to balance a heavy gallon of water on her head. To the village, she was not a human being anymore. She was a warning, a disgrace, a mistake everyone pointed at with cruel smiles. No husband, no parents, no future, they said. Just shame wrapped in faded cloth. But what no one knew was this. On the very same road where she was mocked, fate was already waiting for her. A single decision made in silence with trembling hands would test her integrity, challenge her poverty, and unlock a destiny no one could imagine. How did the girl everyone rejected become the first billionaire her city had ever known? Stay with us. This story will change how you see struggle, honesty, and hope. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and your local time in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this powerful journey. The afternoon sun hung high in the sky, unforgiving and merciless, pressing down on the village stream like a heavy hand. This was the hour when women and children gathered to fetch water, their voices blending into a noisy rhythm of laughter, gossip, and daily complaints. Buckets clanged against stones, babies cried, and the air smelled of dust, sweat, and warm earth. At the edge of the stream stood a girl who did not belong to the laughter. She was young, too young for the weight she carried. 17 years old, her body already worn by exhaustion. One baby was tied tightly to her back with a faded piece of cloth, his tiny head resting against her shoulder. Another clung to her chest, his small fingers gripping her blouse as he cried weakly. Both children were restless, hungry, and hot, just like their mother. She bent down slowly, her knees trembling, and tried to lift the heavy 25-liter gallon of water. Her hands shook as she raised it inch by inch toward her head. Her muscles burned. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps. And then the whispers began. At her age, a woman murmured loudly enough for others to hear. Two children already, another scoffed. What kind of life is that? Even grown women struggle with one baby, someone added. But look at her twins. That's punishment. Soft laughter followed. Not joyful laughter, the kind that cuts into the skin. Some women shook their heads with fake pity. Others stepped away from her path as if misfortune might rub off on them if she came too close. Children stared, openly curious and cruel in the way children often are when adults teach them how to judge. The girl heard everything, her lips pressed tightly together as she fought to keep her emotions locked inside. She refused to cry here, not in front of them, not today. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away and bent again, adjusting her grip on the gallon. The baby in her arms slipped suddenly. Her heart jumped. She gasped and caught him just in time, pulling him tightly against her chest. Her breath shook as fear washed over her. For a brief moment, the noise around her faded, replaced by a single thought. If I fall, who will catch us? At the far end of the stream stood two young women, buckets resting at their feet. They had been watching in silence. One of them, tall and soft-spoken, frowned deeply. She's going to hurt herself, she whispered. She can't manage all that alone. The other nodded, her eyes fixed on the struggling girl. She'll fall if no one helps her. Without another word, they dropped their buckets and walked quickly toward her. Sister, the taller one said gently, reaching out. Please let us help you. The girl turned sharply, panic flashing in her eyes. She clutched her babies closer, her voice rising with pain and anger. Don't touch me! Who sent you? Tell me who sent you! The babies cried louder, sensing their mother's distress. Heads turned. The whispers grew. No one sent us, the second woman said softly, lifting her hands to show she meant no harm. Please don't be afraid, we only saw you struggling. We just want to help, the first added. We are not here to laugh at you. The girl's chest rose and fell rapidly. Everyone laughs at me, she snapped, her voice cracking. Everyone calls me names, I don't need your pity. It's not pity, the taller woman said calmly. It's kindness. Her words landed differently. We don't mock you, the other continued. We don't see you the way they do. We want to be your friends. Friends. The word felt foreign, almost cruel. The girl stared at them, her eyes searching their faces for signs of deception. For a long moment, no one spoke. The noise of the stream rushed between them. Friends, the girl finally whispered. Do I look like someone who deserves friends? Yes, the second woman answered firmly. You do, and today we will prove it. The girl's hands trembled. Her strength was fading fast. Slowly, as if surrendering to something fragile and unfamiliar, she lowered her gaze and exhaled deeply. Fine, she said quietly. Please carry it, but don't betray me. The taller woman immediately lifted the heavy gallon onto her own head, her muscles straining but steady. The other gently took one of the babies from the girl's arms, holding him close and rocking him softly. The stream fell silent. The same villagers who had mocked her moments earlier now watched in stunned disbelief. No laughter, no whispers. Just quiet curiosity as the three young women walked side by side, sharing the burden. For the first time in a very long while, warmth stirred in the girl's chest. As they walked away from the stream, her steps grew lighter, not because the weight was gone, but because she was no longer alone. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with orange and gold, the three sat together outside the girl's small hut. The babies slept peacefully between them, their tiny chests rising and falling in unison. My name is Ada, the taller woman said gently. And I'm Zainab, the other added with a smile. The girl hesitated before speaking. I'm Amara. It was a simple exchange, but it meant everything. As darkness settled over the village, Amara listened as Ada and Zainab talked about ordinary things. Work, food, small dreams. No judgment, no pity, just human connection. Just that night, as Amara lay beside her sleeping children, she stared up at the roof of her hut. The laughter from the stream still echoed in her memory, sharp and painful. But now it was joined by something new. Hope. Small. Fragile. But real. She didn't know it yet, but that day by the stream was more than just another moment of humiliation. It was the first chapter of a transformation that would shake the very village that once rejected her. And somewhere deep within her, a quiet strength was beginning to grow. Before the whispers at the stream, before the shame that clung to her like dust on bare skin, Amara's life had once looked very different. There was a time when her name was spoken with pride. She had been one of the brightest girls in her class, quiet but sharp, the kind of student teachers trusted with responsibilities. She loved books, especially the ones that spoke of faraway places and women who rose above their circumstances. When she was younger, she used to sit by the window in the evenings, her chin resting on her palm, imagining herself finishing school, wearing clean clothes, and working in an office one day. She wanted a life that felt steady, a life that didn't hurt. Her mother believed in her deeply. Amara's mother was not a rich woman, but she was strong, disciplined, and full of wisdom. She sold vegetables in the local market and woke before dawn every day. Yet she always found time to sit with Amara in the evenings, asking about school and reminding her that education was the only inheritance she could give. You must not end up like me, her mother would say gently. You must go further. Amara promised she would. Then everything changed. Her mother fell ill suddenly. At first it seemed like a small sickness, nothing serious. But within weeks her strength faded. The laughter left her eyes. And one quiet night, while Amara slept on a mat beside her, her mother took her final breath. Amara was 17. By morning the house felt empty in a way words could not describe. Neighbors came and went. Relatives cried loudly, then disappeared back to their lives. When the funeral ended, everyone returned to normal, everyone except Amara. She was alone. No father, no siblings, no one to ask. Have you eaten, or how was your day? The nights became colder, the silence heavier. Grief pressed down on her chest until breathing felt like work. It was during this season of loneliness that Victor became her refuge. Victor had been her classmate since childhood. They grew up on the same dusty road, attended the same school, and shared the same simple dreams. He was gentle, soft-spoken, and always patient with her. After her mother's death, he was the one who noticed she stopped talking, the one who followed her after school, making sure she didn't walk home alone. Most evenings, they sat together beneath the old mango tree near the school compound. They talked about life, about the future, about how unfair the world sometimes felt. "Do you think our dreams will ever come true?" Amara asked him one evening, her voice barely louder than the wind. Victor smiled and took her hand. "Yes," he said with quiet confidence. "I will work hard. I will take care of you. We will build something better than this." In her broken state, those words felt like medicine. Comfort slowly turned into closeness. Closeness turned into dependence. And one night, grief and love blurred into a mistake neither of them fully understood at the time. When Amara realized she was pregnant, fear swallowed her whole. She sat on the edge of her mat for hours, staring at the floor, her heart pounding as if it wanted to escape her chest. She thought of the village, the gossip, her mother's teachings. Shame wrapped around her like a rope. When she finally told Victor, her hands shook. "Victor," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "What will we do? Everyone will laugh at me." Victor's eyes filled with tears too. He pulled her into his arms. "Don't cry," he said. "I will not abandon you. I will tell my parents. We will face this together." For the first time in weeks, Amara felt hope again. True to his word, Victor went home and told his parents everything. But instead of support, anger exploded. "You have disgraced this family," his father shouted. "You have destroyed your future," his mother cried. They refused to hear anything else. In their eyes, the pregnancy was a curse and Victor was to blame. They made a decision without asking him. He would drop out of school. "You want to behave like a man," his father said coldly. "Then you will go to the city and work like one." Victor was sent to Abuja to work in a factory. Before he left, he held Amara tightly, his voice breaking. "Be strong," he said. "I will send money. I will come back, I promise." Amara believed him. Weeks passed, then months. She waited for letters. She waited for money. She waited for Victor. One evening, a letter finally arrived. She tore it open with shaking hands. As her eyes scanned the words, the world around her collapsed. There had been an accident at the factory. A machine malfunction. Victor did not survive. Amara fell to the ground, the letter pressed against her chest as she screamed into the night. "God," why she cried. "Why have you left me like this?" No one came. She had lost her mother. Now she had lost Victor. And inside her womb, two lives were growing, silent, fragile, and completely dependent on her. Many people advised her quietly. Some not so quietly. "Get rid of it," they said. "You are too young. Think of your future. No man will marry you like this." But Amara made a decision that night. She placed her hands on her belly and whispered through tears, "I will keep you. Even if the whole world hates me, I will not throw you away." Months later, after hours of pain and blood, Amara gave birth to twins, two tiny boys who cried with all the strength she thought she had lost. She named them Kofi and Kojo. But instead of joy, mockery followed. At 17, people whispered. Twins, they laughed. "That girl is finished." Amara held her sons close and lifted her head. "My Kofi, my Kojo," she whispered, "I will raise you with dignity. I will fight for you, even if I have to stand alone." She didn't know how she would survive. She didn't know where the strength would come from. But one thing was clear. Her journey, one marked by loss, broken promises, and painful choices, had only just begun. The night Amara went into labor, the sky was dark and restless. There was no mother to hold her hand, No husband pacing the floor, no elder woman whispering encouragement into her ear. Only pain, thick and relentless, crashing through her body in waves that stole her breath and blurred her vision. She labored on a thin mat inside her small hut, biting down on a piece of cloth to keep from screaming too loudly. In this village, a girl in her condition did not deserve sympathy. If she cried too much, someone might tell her to be quiet, to suffer silently for her mistake. Hours passed. Sweat soaked her hair. Her arms trembled from gripping the mat so tightly. More than once, fear crept into her heart, whispering that she might not survive the night. Then, just before dawn, the first cry pierced the silence. A baby, weak, but alive. Tears streamed down Amara's face as she pulled the tiny body to her chest. Before she could even catch her breath, another pain surged through her, stronger than the last. She screamed, her voice raw and broken, and then came the second cry. 2 lives, 2 hearts beating against her own. Kofi and Kojo had arrived. For a brief moment, the world felt still. The pain faded into the background as Amara stared at the faces of her sons. They were small, fragile, and completely unaware of the storm they had been born into. "My boys," she whispered, kissing their foreheads. "You are here." But reality returned quickly. By morning, the news had spread through the village like wildfire. Did you hear she had twins? At 17, God help her, women came to see with their own eyes, not to celebrate but to confirm the story. They stood at her doorway, arms crossed, whispering among themselves. Some shook their heads, others clicked their tongues in judgment. "This one has ruined her life," someone said loudly. "No man will take her now," another added. Amara listened in silence as she nursed her babies, her back aching, her body still weak. Every word landed like a stone, but she refused to let them see her break. Days turned into weeks. Her body healed slowly, but her struggle had only begun. There was food to find, water to fetch, and 2 mouths that cried constantly for milk. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Some nights she stayed awake until dawn, rocking Kofi and Kojo as they cried in turns, her arms numb with exhaustion. She returned to the stream with them tied to her body, the same place where laughter followed her like a shadow. Each trip felt heavier than the last. Still she went, because giving up was not an option. But just as she was learning to survive, another presence entered her life, one that carried the smell of danger disguised as family. Uncle Kwesi. He was her late mother's older cousin, a man who had taken charge during the funeral. At the time, people praised him for stepping up, paying for drinks, directing rituals, speaking loudly as if authority belonged naturally to him. Amara had been grateful then. She had been too broken to question his intentions. Now his true face began to show. One afternoon, as Amara sat outside her hut rocking Kojo to sleep with Kofi tied to her back, Uncle Kwesi appeared at her doorway. He stood tall, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning her small compound as if measuring its worth. "Amara," he began, his voice heavy with false concern. "You are too young for this burden." She looked up slowly. "What do you mean, Uncle? You cannot raise 2 children alone," he continued. "Tradition says family must step in when a girl becomes overwhelmed." "It is for their own good." Her heart tightened. "What are you saying?" she asked cautiously. "Give the children to me," he said plainly. "I will make sure they are trained properly. You can still rebuild your life." The words hit her like a slap. "These are my children," Amara replied, her voice firm despite the fear creeping into her chest. "I will raise them myself." Uncle Kwesi's eyes narrowed. "Do not be stubborn," he said. "Think of your future. You are still a girl. If you give them to the elders, you can marry again. You can start fresh." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but she did not let them fall. My future is with my sons, she said quietly. I will not give them away. For a moment, Uncle Quasi said nothing. Then he smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. If that is how you feel, he said slowly, then you must sign over the land near the stream. Amara stood up abruptly, Kojo stirring in her arms. No, she said immediately. That land belongs to my children. My father left it for us. Uncle Quasi's smile vanished. As family, he snapped, I have the right to manage it. You do not, Amara replied, her hands shaking but her voice steady. Not now, not ever. Silence fell between them. You are disrespecting me, he said coldly. You will regret this. He turned and stormed away, leaving dust swirling in his wake. Amara's legs gave way beneath her as she sat back down, her heart pounding. She hugged her children close, whispering comfort into their ears, even as fear crawled up her spine. She knew then that her battle was no longer just about survival. It was about protection. A week later, Uncle Quasi returned, this time with company. 3 men from his compound stood beside him, their voices loud enough to attract neighbors. Custom gives us the right to care for orphans, one of them shouted. A small girl like this cannot raise twins. People gathered, whispering, watching. Amara stepped out of her hut, Kofi in her arms and Kojo tied securely to her back. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights, but her posture was straight. These are my children, she said clearly. This land belongs to them. I will not surrender either. The men exchanged glances. If you want to fight me, she continued, her voice steady, then fight. But I will never give them away. For a long moment no one spoke. Uncle Quasi's jaw tightened with anger, but he said nothing. Slowly he turned and walked away, his men following behind him. As the crowd dispersed, Amara stood alone in her compound, her children clinging to her body. That day something changed inside her. She realized that poverty was only one enemy. The other was greed hidden behind tradition, family, and authority. And she was ready to fight both. Life after the birth of Kofi and Kojo did not soften Amara. If anything, it grew harder. The days began before sunrise. Long before the village roosters crowed, Amara was already awake, sitting upright on her mat with one baby at her breast, and the other crying softly beside her. Her body ached constantly, her back sore from carrying weight, her arms numb from endless rocking, her eyes burning from nights without rest. There was no time to recover. When one child slept, the other woke. When both slept, hunger pulled Amara to her feet. She had learned quickly that motherhood was not gentle, especially for a girl doing it alone. Food was scarce. Some days she survived on a single meal, thin porridge made from borrowed grain. Other days she ate nothing at all, saving what little she had for her sons. When her milk reduced from exhaustion and hunger, fear crept into her heart like poison. What if I cannot feed them? She whispered one night, holding her breasts in despair. What if I fail them? She pushed the thought away immediately. Failure was a luxury she could not afford. Every morning she tied Kojo tightly to her back and balanced Kofi on her hip. Then she lifted her empty gallon and began the long walk to the stream. Her legs felt heavy, but she forced herself forward step by step. The villagers had not forgotten her. If anything, they had grown bolder. Here she comes again, someone would mutter. The girl who threw her life away. 2 babies and no husband, what a curse. Sometimes women stopped their conversations when she approached. Other times they laughed openly, their eyes following her as if she were a strange animal on display. Children repeated what they heard at home. Mama said you are bad, one boy shouted once as she passed. Why do you have 2 babies? Another asked loudly. Amara kept walking, her jaw tight, her heart bleeding silently. At the stream, she worked quickly, keeping her head down. She learned how to balance the gallon more efficiently, how to adjust the cloth on her back so Kojo would not slip, how to steady Kofi with one arm while lifting weight with the other. She was learning survival the hard way. Ada and Zainab remained her only refuge. Whenever they could, they visited her hut, bringing small things, a handful of rice-leftover soup. Sometimes nothing but their presence. They helped bathe the babies, laughed with them, and talked to Amara like she was still a person worthy of conversation. "You are strong," Ada told her one afternoon as they sat outside watching Kofi crawl clumsily on the ground. "Stronger than you know." Amara smiled faintly. "Strength is forced on people like me." Zainab reached for her hand. "Still, you carry it well." Those moments kept Amara going. But Uncle Kwesi had not forgotten her refusal. From time to time, she noticed him watching from a distance, standing near the market, pausing on the path that led to her hut. He never spoke to her again, but his presence felt heavy, threatening. Amara knew he was waiting for weakness, waiting for desperation. And desperation came quietly. One evening, as Harmattan wind crept through the cracks of her hut, Amara noticed that Kojo felt warmer than usual. She pressed her lips to his forehead and frowned. "He's hot," she murmured. She wrapped him more carefully and stayed awake through the night, checking him constantly. By morning, his fever had risen. His cries were weak and thin, nothing like the loud protests she was used to. Fear wrapped around her heart. "Kofi," she whispered, holding the other baby close as if he might disappear too. "Please, my son, stay strong." She tried everything she knew, cooling Kojo's body with damp cloth, whispering prayers, rocking him gently. But by afternoon, his breathing had grown fast and shallow, his tiny chest rising and falling too quickly. Amara panicked. She tied Kojo tightly to her back, lifted Kofi into her arms, and ran. Barefoot, she raced through the village toward the small clinic at the edge of town. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed for rest, but she did not stop. Inside the clinic, the smell of disinfectant hit her nose sharply. She rushed to the desk, her voice trembling. "Please," she begged. "My baby is sick. Please help me." The nurse glanced at her briefly, her eyes sliding over Amara's worn clothes and tired face. "Put him on the bench," she said flatly. The doctor examined Kojo quickly, then straightened. "He needs urgent treatment," he said. "High fever, possibly infection." Hope surged briefly in Amara's chest. But the doctor continued, "You must deposit 50,000 naira before we start." The world tilted. 50,000, Amara repeated faintly. "Yes," the doctor replied, already turning away. "No deposit, no treatment." Her knees buckled. "Doctor, please," she cried, dropping to her knees. "I don't have that kind of money. Start the treatment. I will find it. I beg you." The doctor did not look back. "No money, no treatment," he said coldly. Amara grabbed Kojo tightly, tears streaming down her face as his cries weakened further. She stumbled out of the clinic, her heart pounding with terror. She ran from house to house. "Please help me," she begged, knocking desperately. "My baby will die." Some doors opened briefly. A few hands offered small coins. Others closed without a word. By evening, her feet were swollen, her throat raw from crying. Still, she had not gathered enough. That was when Uncle Kwesi appeared. He stood calmly at the edge of her compound, watching as she collapsed onto the ground, Kojo burning against her back. "I heard your child is sick," he said smoothly. Amara looked up at him, hope and fear colliding in her eyes. "Uncle," she sobbed, "please help me." "I can give you the money," he said. "All of it." Relief flooded her face until he added, "But there is a condition." Her heart sank. "The land by the stream," he said calmly. "Sign it over to me." Amara stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to trade my son's life for his future," she whispered. Uncle Kwesi's eyes were cold. "Choose," he said simply. Amara screamed. The sound drew neighbors out of their homes. When they heard what had happened, shame washed over them. Slowly, people began to contribute 500 here, 1,000 there. By dawn, the money was complete. Kojo received treatment. He survived. As Amara held him in her arms that morning, tears soaking his blanket, she whispered a vow into his tiny ear. "I will not lose you," she said. "I will not lose either of you." But deep inside, she knew something else. The land Uncle Kwesi wanted so badly carried more than soil. It carried destiny. And that destiny was already moving toward her. After Kojo's fever finally broke, the village returned to its usual rhythm as if nothing extraordinary had happened. People went back to their farms, their gossip, their laughter. But Amara did not return to who she had been before. Something inside her had hardened. She had seen how quickly compassion could turn into cruelty, how rules could become weapons, how family could use tradition to disguise greed. And she had learned painfully that in moments of crisis, survival often depended on strangers rather than blood. Days after Kojo recovered, Amara resumed her routine. She carried water. She washed clothes for small coins. She patched torn fabric late into the night by candlelight. Each day blended into the next, heavy and exhausting. Yet unseen by her, another story was unfolding in the same village. One quiet evening, a sleek car rolled slowly down the dusty road leading into town. It was the kind of car that did not belong there, too clean, too modern, too confident. Heads turned as it passed. Conversations paused. Children ran after it, laughing in disbelief. "The son of the Achebe family has returned," someone whispered. His name was Nnamdi Achebe. More than 20 years earlier, Nnamdi had left the village with nothing but ambition and determination. People said he had gone abroad, worked tirelessly, built businesses, and raised a family in a land far from home. Now he was back not just to visit, but to build a permanent home for his aging mother and prepare for his wife and children to finally see the place he came from. Some villagers admired him. Others envied him quietly. A few waited eagerly to see how powerful he had become. Nnamdi himself walked through the village with a calm confidence. He greeted elders respectfully, listened more than he spoke, and moved with the ease of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. One bright morning, he decided to take a walk with his mother. She leaned lightly on his arm, smiling proudly as she pointed out the lands she had bought over the years with the money he had sent home. "This one," she said, gesturing toward a wide stretch of farmland, "I bought it when your second child was born." Nnamdi smiled. "You managed it well, Mama." They continued walking until they reached a smaller plot near the stream. "And this one," she added, "is also yours." The sun was rising higher now, its heat pressing against Nnamdi's skin. He reached into his pocket for a handkerchief to wipe his face. As he pulled it out, something else slipped free and fell silently onto the dusty road behind him. His wallet. Neither he nor his mother noticed. They continued walking, laughing softly, talking about house plans and future visits. The wallet lay still, its black leather slightly open, revealing a glimpse of what was inside: foreign currency, local notes, and important documents. It waited. That same morning, Amara was on her way back from the stream. The gallon of water balanced carefully on her head, Kojo tied securely to her back, Kofi resting heavily on her arm. Sweat rolled down her face as she walked slowly, her legs aching from the weight she carried every day. Then she saw it. Something dark against the pale dust of the road. She stopped. At first she thought it was a piece of cloth. Then she stepped closer and realized it was a wallet. Her heart skipped. It looked expensive, smooth leather, well kept, nothing like the worn belongings common in the village. She stood still for a long moment, staring at it as if it might speak. "Leave it," a voice whispered inside her. "Trouble follows things like this." She looked around. The road was empty, no one in sight. Slowly, carefully, she bent down and picked it up. The leather felt soft in her hands. Foreign. Heavy. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Inside were neat stacks of money, some local, some foreign currency she had only seen in pictures. There were also identification cards, photographs of a man she did not know, and folded papers that looked official. Her mind raced. This money, she thought. This money could feed my children. It could change everything. She imagined paying debts before they even existed, buying food without counting coins, never kneeling in front of another doctor again. But another thought followed, immediately sharp and terrifying. If I take this, they will call me a thief. She could already hear the villagers' voices. She stole it. We always knew she was bad. Look at her pretending to be innocent. Her chest tightened. If she left the wallet there, someone else would take it and perhaps never return it. If she took it home, even for a moment, suspicion could destroy her completely. Amara pressed the wallet tightly against her chest, her heart pounding. I need to think, she whispered. She slipped it carefully into the fold of her wrapper, hiding it close to her body. Then she lifted the heavy gallon back onto her head, adjusted Kojo's cloth, and continued walking. All the way home, her thoughts spun wildly. By the time she reached her hut, Ada and Zainab were already there waiting for her. You're back, Ada said with a smile, immediately stepping forward to help her lower the gallon. Zainab took Kofi gently from Amara's arms. Come here, little man, she said softly. For a brief moment, Amara allowed herself to smile, but Zainab noticed the tension in her eyes. What's wrong? She asked gently. Amara hesitated. Then slowly she untied her wrapper and pulled out the wallet. Both women froze. What is that? Ada whispered. I found it on the road, Amara said quietly. They opened it together. Zainab's eyes widened. This money. This is more than I've ever seen in my life. Ada picked up one of the identification cards and studied it closely. I think I know who this belongs to, she said slowly. The Achebe family, the man who just returned from overseas. Silence fell between them. Zainab broke it first. Amara, she said cautiously, this could be your miracle. Ada turned to her sharply. Or it could be her destruction. They both looked at Amara. Amara closed the wallet slowly, her hands shaking. I don't know what to do, she admitted, but I know one thing: I cannot rush this decision. That same evening, far across the village, Namdi reached into his pocket and frowned. His wallet was gone, and with it a document he could not afford to lose. As worry settled heavily on his chest, fate tightened its grip. 2 lives, one rich, one poor, had unknowingly crossed paths, and neither would ever be the same again. That night, sleep refused to come. Amara lay on her mat with Kofi and Kojo curled against her body, their small breaths warm on her skin. Outside, the village settled into darkness, broken only by distant laughter and the occasional bark of a dog. Inside her hut, the air felt heavy, thick with questions that had no easy answers. The wallet lay hidden beneath a folded cloth near her mat. Even without looking at it, Amara could feel its presence. It pulsed in her mind like a living thing, calling to her fears and her hopes at the same time. Every time Kojo stirred in his sleep, her heart clenched. She remembered his fever, the clinic, the doctor's cold voice, the way her knees had hit the ground as she begged, the way Uncle Kwesi had looked at her like a trader inspecting goods. This money could stop that from ever happening again. A voice whispered inside her. No more begging, no more kneeling. She turned onto her side, facing the wall, and pressed her eyes shut. But at what cost? Another voice replied. She had seen what the village did to people they suspected, how quickly rumors turned into truth, how easily judgment became punishment. A girl like her could not survive another stain on her name. If she kept the wallet and someone found out, there would be no mercy. They already call you a disgrace, her thoughts taunted. This would make it permanent. Amara sat up slowly and reached for the wallet. Her hands trembled as she opened it again, the dim glow of the lantern revealing the neat arrangement of money and cards. The foreign notes looked unreal, like something from another world. She counted quickly, her breath catching. It was more money than she had ever held in her entire life. Her mind raced with possibilities. A small shop, enough food for months, medicine without begging, school fees one day. She looked at her sons. Kofi shifted in his sleep, his tiny hand curling instinctively around her finger. Kojo sighed softly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Tears blurred Amara's vision. "If I fail you," she whispered, "it will not be because I didn't have a chance." She closed the wallet firmly and wrapped it back in cloth. "I will not let money destroy what little peace I have left," she said aloud, as if speaking the words would give them strength. Morning came slowly. The sun rose over the village, casting pale light over dusty paths and quiet compounds. Amara woke early, her decision still heavy but clearer now. Ada and Zainab arrived not long after, carrying a small bowl of leftover rice and a handful of dried fish. "You didn't sleep," Zainab said gently, studying Amara's face. Amara shook her head. "I made a decision," she replied quietly. Ada's heart seemed to beat faster. "Which one?" "I'm returning the wallet." Zainab inhaled sharply. "Amara?" "I know," Amara interrupted softly. "I know what it could do for me. But I also know what it could do to me." Ada nodded slowly, her eyes full of respect. "Then we will go with you." "No," Amara said, standing up. "I must do this myself." She tied Kojo to her back and lifted Kofi into her arms, hiding the wallet securely within her wrapper. Her legs felt weak, but her back was straight. As she stepped onto the road leading toward the Achebe compound, a strange calm settled over her. At the same time, across the village, Nnamdi Achebe paced his living room. His wallet was still missing. He had searched the house again, checked his car, asked his mother gently if she had seen it. Nothing. Inside that wallet was not just money. It was a document that could delay his business plans for months if lost. His jaw tightened as worry crept deeper into his chest. "Someone must have found it," he muttered. His mother watched him carefully. "Calm yourself, my son," she said. "If God wants it returned, it will return." Nnamdi sighed and grabbed his car keys. "I need fresh air." He stepped outside and drove off slowly, unaware that the person carrying his missing wallet was walking only a short distance away. Amara reached the Achebe compound just after he left. The gate stood open, revealing a clean, spacious yard unlike anything she was used to. Her heart pounded as she stepped inside, suddenly very aware of her worn clothes and bare feet. An elderly woman sat on a chair near the entrance, peeling vegetables. Amara bent low. "Good afternoon, Mama." The woman looked up and smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, my daughter. How are you?" "I am fine," Mama Amara replied softly. "Please, I came to see your son." The woman nodded. "He just stepped out. What do you want with him?" Amara swallowed hard and slowly untied her wrapper. She pulled out the wallet and held it out with both hands. "I found this on the road near the stream yesterday," she said. "I believe it belongs to him." The old woman's eyes widened. She opened the wallet quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she checked the contents. When she saw that everything was intact, she pressed the wallet to her chest. "My daughter," she breathed, "my son has been searching everywhere for this." Relief washed over her face as she looked at Amara again. "You don't know what you have done." Amara lowered her head. "I only did what was right, Mama." The woman reached out and squeezed her hand firmly. "May God bless you. Your children will never lack." Tears filled Amara's eyes as she turned to leave. That evening, when Nnamdi returned home, his mother met him at the door with the wallet in her hands. His breath caught. "Mama," he said sharply, "where did you get that?" She smiled. "A young girl brought it." He took it from her, opening it quickly, his relief overwhelming. "Everything is here," he whispered. "Every single thing." His mother told him the story slowly, the girl, the two babies, the respect in her greeting, the honesty in her eyes. Namdi listened in silence. The same girl people mock, his mother concluded. The orphan with twins. Namdi leaned back, his heart heavy. "So the one everyone despises is the one with the cleanest hands?" "Yes," his mother said softly. "You must see her." Namdi nodded firmly. Tomorrow. As night fell, Amara sat in her hut with her children, unaware that her quiet act of integrity had already begun to shift the direction of her life. The road ahead was still uncertain, but the first door had opened. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Amara woke before dawn, her body stiff from another restless night. Kofi and Kojo slept side by side, their small hands touching, unaware that their mother's life was standing on the edge of change. She watched them for a long moment, memorizing the rise and fall of their chests, the soft sounds they made in sleep. For the first time in many days, her heart felt lighter. She did not know why. Outside, the sun began to lift itself over the horizon, painting the dusty paths in pale gold. Amara stepped out of her hut to sweep the compound, moving slowly so as not to wake the boys. As she bent down, she heard a sound that made her freeze. An engine, not the rattling motorcycle of a villager, not the old truck that sometimes passed through. This was smooth, controlled, expensive. She straightened slowly. A large black vehicle was parked just beyond her compound, its windows dark, its presence impossible to ignore. For a moment, fear clenched her stomach. Had Uncle Kwesi sent someone? Had trouble finally found her again? The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, dressed simply but with an unmistakable air of authority. He looked around quietly, his gaze settling on Amara. His eyes were sharp, observant, not unkind, but heavy with purpose. Amara's heart began to race. She bent low in greeting, instinctively lowering her eyes. "Good morning, sir." The man nodded. "Good morning." His voice was calm, steady, so he continued, studying her carefully. "You are the young woman who returned my wallet." Amara's breath caught. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. He took a step closer, his expression thoughtful. "My mother told me everything. About how you came here with two babies. About how nothing was missing." Amara said nothing. Words felt too fragile. "I have searched this village for years," the man continued, slowly, trying to understand people. "I have met many who smile with empty hands, but very few who return what could save them." He paused. "You are 17, he said. An orphan, a single mother of twins. And yet when temptation met you on the road, you chose honesty." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. "I only did what was right, sir," she whispered. The man exhaled deeply. "In a world like ours that is rare," he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. "Take this," he said gently, extending it toward her. Amara hesitated, fear and humility mixing in her chest. "Sir, I didn't return the wallet to be rewarded." "I know," he replied. "That is why I am giving it to you." Her hands shook as she accepted the envelope. She did not open it. She did not need to. "This is not payment," he continued. "This is support. Use it for yourself and your children. And when you are ready, when you have thought about what you truly want to do with your life, come and see me." He met her eyes directly. "I will help you." Amara's knees buckled. She fell to the ground, clutching the envelope tightly as tears spilled freely down her face. "Thank you, sir," she cried. "May God bless you. May your children never suffer." The man bent slightly and touched her shoulder with unexpected gentleness. "Stand up, my daughter. This is only the beginning." He turned and walked back to his car, leaving behind a silence so thick it felt unreal. Amara stood there for a long time, her heart pounding. Only when the vehicle disappeared down the road did she finally breathe. That afternoon, Ada and Zainab came running. "We saw the car," Zainab exclaimed. "Amara, what happened?" Amara smiled faintly, holding the envelope close. "He came," she said. "The owner of the wallet," and Ada pressed eagerly. "And he helped me." Joy exploded between them. They laughed, clapped, and hugged her carefully so as not to wake the babies. "You see," Ada said softly, "goodness does not go unseen forever." But as night fell, Amara's excitement gave way to fear. She lay awake again, this time staring at the envelope beside her mat. The money inside represented something she had never had before: choice. But with choice came responsibility. "What if I waste this?" she whispered into the darkness. "What if I fail again?" She thought of Kojo's fever, of the clinic, of Uncle Kwesi's cruel offer, of the land by the stream. Then she thought of the future. She pressed her palms together and prayed quietly. "God, if you have opened this door, please show me how to walk through it." The answer did not come immediately. The next day, as the village buzzed with quiet rumors about the black car and the rich man's visit, Uncle Kwesi stood at a distance watching Amara's compound with narrowed eyes. He had heard. He had seen. And for the first time, doubt crept into his confidence. "Who is backing her now?" he muttered. Days passed. Amara did not spend the money recklessly. She bought food, paid small debts, took her children for proper checkups. She watched carefully, learning how far each note could stretch. Ada and Zainab visited often, helping her think. "You should start something," Zainab suggested one evening. "Something that can grow, like what Amara asked." Ada leaned forward, her eyes bright. "Poultry farming." Amara frowned. "Chickens." "Yes," Ada said eagerly. "Eggs sell every day. People cannot do without them. And you already have land." At the mention of land, Amara's heart skipped. The land by the stream, the land Uncle Kwesi wanted. That night, sleep did not come easily again, but this time her thoughts were not filled with fear alone. They were filled with possibility. She imagined rows of birds, crates of eggs, money earned honestly, a future where no one could threaten her children again. But doubt whispered too. What if the birds die? What if disease wipes everything out? What if this chance slips through your fingers? Amara turned to look at her sons. "If I don't try," she whispered, "then I have already failed." By morning, her decision was made. She would go back. She would face the man who believed in her. And she would ask not for charity, but for a chance to build something that could not be taken away from her. Unseen by her, destiny shifted again. The girl once mocked at the stream was about to step into the role of a woman with vision. And nothing would ever be the same. The morning Amara decided to return to Namdi Achebe's house, the sky was unusually clear. There were no clouds, no signs of rain, just a wide blue stretch above the village, quiet and watchful. She took it as a sign, though she didn't know of what. After bathing her sons and feeding them carefully, she tied Kojo to her back and carried Kofi in her arms, just as she always did. The envelope was not with her this time. She had left it hidden in her hut. Today was not about money, it was about direction. As she walked toward the Achebe compound, her steps slowed. Each one felt heavier than the last, weighed down by doubt. She had never asked anyone for an opportunity like this before. In her world, people did not offer chances, they offered judgment, conditions, or rejection. What if he laughed at her idea? What if he thought she was asking for too much? What if this was the moment everything collapsed again? She stopped briefly under the shade of a neem tree and closed her eyes. "I will speak with honesty," she whispered. "That is all I have." When she reached the compound, the gate was open. The house stood tall and clean, its fresh paint catching the sunlight. For a second, she felt small, too small to belong there. An elderly woman sat on the veranda. Mama Amara greeted, bending low. Namdi's mother smiled warmly. "Ah, my daughter, you've come." "Yes," Mama Amara replied. "I came to see your son. He is inside," the woman said, gesturing. "Go in." Inside the living room, Namdi was seated at a table covered with papers. He looked up as Amara entered and smiled gently. "Welcome," he said. "Please sit." Amara sat carefully, balancing Kofi on her lap while Kojo slept against her back. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared he could hear it. "I've been thinking about what you told me," Namdi began. "About my offer to help." "Yes, sir," Amara replied. "I have also been thinking." He leaned back slightly. "Tell me." She took a deep breath. "I don't want to depend on handouts," she said slowly. "I want to build something. Something that will feed my children long after today." Namdi's eyes sharpened with interest. "I've spoken to friends," Amara continued, "and I believe poultry farming egg production can work. Eggs sell every day. People need them constantly. If I start small and learn properly, I can grow." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "I know it has risks, disease, loss, failure, but I am willing to learn. I am willing to work." Silence filled the room. Namdi studied her carefully, not her clothes or her poverty, but her posture, her eyes, her courage. "You have thought this through," he said finally. "Yes, sir." His mother nodded approvingly. "She speaks with wisdom," she added. "But who will care for the children while she works?" Amara swallowed. She had expected this question. "I will find a helper," she said. "Someone trustworthy. I know I cannot do everything alone." Namdi nodded slowly. "Here is what we will do," he said after a moment. "You will go and make inquiries. Find out the cost of building a poultry house, buying equipment, and starting with chicks. Write everything down. When you return, we will review it together." Amara's eyes widened. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "And Amara," he added, "we will not start small." Her breath caught. "We will begin with 1,000 chicks." She gasped softly. "Sir, that is too much." Namdi smiled. "It is not too much if you are prepared." She tried to kneel, but he raised his hand. "Do not kneel," he said firmly. "You have already earned your place." Tears filled Amara's eyes as she bowed her head in gratitude. That same day, she ran to Ada and Zainab. "He agreed," she said breathlessly. "He wants me to prepare a full plan." Ada clapped her hands in joy. "This is your moment." Zainab nodded. "I know someone who can help you learn properly. My cousin has a large poultry farm in the next village." Hope bloomed again. Within days, Amara began traveling back and forth to learn. She woke before dawn, left her children in the care of a neighbor she trusted, and followed Zainab to the farm. There she learned things she had never imagined: how to feed chicks correctly, how to clean pens, how to detect sickness early, how to keep records. Her hands blistered, her clothes smelled of feed and dust, but her spirit felt alive. This is work, she told herself, honest work. When she finally returned to Namdi with her written plan, he smiled broadly. "You are serious," he said. "Good." Construction began soon after. The poultry house rose on the very land by the stream, the land Uncle Kwesi had once demanded with threats and cruelty. Now it echoed with the sound of hammers and hope. Uncle Kwesi watched from a distance. At first he didn't believe it. Then the walls went up. Then the roof. Then the equipment arrived. Then the chicks. 1,000 of them. The noise filled the air. The land came alive. Uncle Kwesi clenched his fists in frustration. "She has backing," he muttered. "Powerful backing." For the first time he felt fear. Amara worked tirelessly. She fed the birds, cleaned their space, and followed every lesson she had learned. Namdi visited occasionally, observing quietly, offering guidance but never control. "You are doing well," he told her one morning. "Keep going." Weeks passed. The chicks grew strong. Eggs came. Crates began to stack. Buyers arrived, and with each sale, Amara felt something new settle into her bones. Security. That night, as she counted her earnings under the dim lantern light, Kofi and Kojo laughed beside her, their voices bright and free. "Look at us," she whispered, smiling through tears. "We are moving forward." The girl once mocked at the stream was no longer begging for survival. She was building a future, one careful decision at a time. The sound of clucking filled the air long before sunrise. It was a sound Amara had grown to love, a sound that meant life, growth, and progress. Each morning she woke with renewed purpose, tying Kojo to her back and holding Kofi close as she walked toward the poultry house. The ground beneath her feet, once just dry soil that others tried to seize from her, now felt sacred. This land was working for her. Inside the poultry house, the birds moved restlessly, healthy and strong. Amara checked their feed carefully, just as she had been taught. She inspected their feathers, watched their movement, and cleaned every corner with discipline. She kept records on scraps of paper, at first noting feed quantities, expenses, and growth. Later, she bought a notebook and wrote neatly, treating each page like a promise to herself. She was no longer guessing. She was learning. The first eggs arrived quietly, almost shyly. One morning, as Amara bent down to clean a corner of the coop, she noticed a small, brown egg resting on the floor. She froze. Then she laughed, a soft, disbelieving laugh that turned into tears. "It's working," she whispered. "It's really working." Within days, one egg became many. Crates slowly filled. The sight of them made her heart race, not with fear, but with pride. When the first buyer arrived, Amara felt her hands shake. He was a trader from the nearby town, introduced by Zainab's cousin. He examined the eggs carefully, nodding with approval. "These are good," he said. "Clean, fresh." "How much?" Amara asked, her voice cautious. He named a fair price. When he handed her the money, Amara held it tightly, as if afraid it might disappear. This money had not come from pity. It had not come from charity. It came from work. That night she sat in her hut counting her earnings, while Kofi and Kojo played beside her, laughing as they pushed small stones across the floor. "This," she whispered to them, "is what honesty looks like." News traveled fast in the village. People began to notice the steady movement around Amara's land. They saw buyers coming and going. They heard the constant sound of birds. Slowly, the laughter that once followed her footsteps faded into curious whispers. "Is it true she has a poultry farm who is supporting her?" Some asked out of admiration. Others asked with suspicion. Uncle Kwesi asked with bitterness. He stood at the edge of the bush one afternoon watching Amara work. He saw her confidence, her steady movements, her children playing safely nearby. The same girl he had once threatened now walked with her head high. "This was supposed to be my land," he muttered. "My future." But it was too late. He knew it. Weeks passed and production increased. Amara learned how to negotiate prices, how to keep buyers loyal, how to reinvest small profits back into the business. She resisted the temptation to spend everything at once. Ada watched her one evening as she carefully separated money into small piles. "You've changed," Ada said quietly. Amara smiled. "I had to." Zainab nodded. "Poverty teaches speed. Responsibility teaches wisdom." Namdi continued to visit, though never loudly or frequently. When he did, he walked through the poultry house with a thoughtful expression, asking questions that showed he respected her intelligence. "You're keeping the place clean," he observed one morning. That alone saves you from many disasters. I learned from the best, Amara replied with a shy smile. His mother visited too, sometimes sitting under the shade while watching Kofi and Kojo play. These children will grow strong, she said once, because their mother did not sell her dignity. As the months went by, Amara hired 2 young women from the village to help with cleaning and feeding. For the first time, she was not just surviving, she was providing work. People noticed that too. The same women who once whispered behind her back now greeted her cautiously. "Good morning," they said, unsure. Amara greeted them back politely, without bitterness. Her focus was forward, not backward. Then came the test. One morning, Amara noticed something was wrong. A few birds were unusually quiet, their feathers were ruffled. Her heart skipped. Disease. Fear surged through her, sharp and familiar, but this time she did not panic. She isolated the birds, immediately contacted the mentor who had trained her, and followed instructions carefully. Medication was administered, sanitation increased, losses were minimized. When it passed, Amara sat on the ground outside the poultry house, her body shaking, not from weakness but from relief. "I handled it," she whispered. "I didn't run." That night she cried quietly, holding her children close, not tears of despair, tears of growth. By the end of the first production cycle, Amara had proven something to herself most of all. She returned to Namdi's house with her records neatly organized. He reviewed them carefully, nodding slowly. "You've done well," he said finally. "Very well." Then he smiled. "As promised," he continued, "we will expand." Amara's breath caught. "We will increase to 5,000 birds." Her hands flew to her mouth. "Sir, you've earned it," he said gently. "And this time the risk is smaller. You know what you're doing." Construction expanded, more pens were built, more workers hired, more buyers contacted. Amara's name began to travel beyond the village. The young woman with the poultry, the one who returned the lost wallet, the one who never gave up. Years passed faster than she expected. 5,000 birds became 10,000. 10,000 became 20,000. Vehicles were bought to transport eggs to the city. New buyers lined up. Money flowed steadily, not wildly but wisely. Amara invested carefully. She bought small plots of land in nearby towns, built simple houses and rented them out. She created multiple streams of income, remembering too well what it felt like to have nothing. Kofi and Kojo grew into bright, confident boys. They attended a good school, wearing clean uniforms that once existed only in Amara's imagination. The village changed too. Where there was once unemployment, there was now work. Roads grew busier, shops opened. Hope spread quietly like seeds carried by the wind. Uncle Kwesi watched it all from a distance. He never came to apologize. Pride would not allow it. But every time he saw Amara pass, he lowered his eyes. He knew the truth. The land he tried to steal had become the foundation of something far greater than he ever imagined. One evening, as the sun set behind her growing estate, Amara stood watching her sons run toward her, their laughter filling the air. She opened her arms wide and they ran into them. "We're home, Mama," they shouted. Amara smiled, her heart full. Yes. She was home. Not just in a place, but in a life she had built with courage, integrity, and unbreakable resolve. Success did not arrive in Amara's life like a loud celebration. It came quietly, steadily, like water filling a dry riverbed day by day. By the time her poultry farm crossed 20,000 birds, Amara had learned that growth was not just about numbers. It was about discipline. It was about restraint. And most of all, it was about remembering who she had been before the world finally learned her name. Each morning she still woke early. Not because she had to anymore, but because routine grounded her. She walked through the farms with a notebook in hand, greeting workers by name, asking about their families, listening to their concerns. Many of them were people who once stood among the crowd that mocked her at the stream. Now they worked for her. Some avoided her eyes, carrying unspoken shame. Others greeted her with forced smiles, unsure of how to behave around a woman whose status had risen so dramatically. "Good morning, madam," they said. Amara always replied, "Good morning," in the same calm voice. She did not correct them. She did not enjoy the title. But she understood its weight. With growth came temptation. Banks began to call. Politicians sent representatives. Distant relatives appeared with sudden affection, claiming blood ties they had never acknowledged before. Business partners proposed fast expansions, risky shortcuts, and deals that promised quick profit. "You can triple this in 1 year," one man told her confidently. "All you need is influence," another said. "Why move slowly when power is within reach?" Amara listened. Then she said no. She had learned the cost of desperation too well. Instead, she focused on structure. She registered her businesses properly, hired accountants, built systems that did not rely solely on her presence. She wanted something that would outlive her strength. At home, Kofi and Kojo thrived. They were no longer the fragile babies tied to her back at the stream. They were curious, energetic boys who asked endless questions about the world. They talked about school, about books, about becoming doctors, engineers, and leaders. One evening, as they sat around the dining table in their new home, Kojo asked quietly, "Mama, why do people stare at you when we go out?" Amara paused. "Because they didn't expect me to be here," she answered honestly. Kofi frowned. "Why not?" She smiled gently. "Because many people believe your beginning decides your ending." "And they were wrong?" Kojo asked. "Yes," she replied softly. "They were wrong." Her success brought change beyond her household. With her farms expanding, Amara employed hundreds of men and women who once had no steady income. She paid fair wages. She provided training. She insisted on respect in the workplace, especially toward women. Slowly, the village transformed. Where hunger once lingered, food became accessible. Where young people once dreamed only of leaving, opportunities appeared at home. Small businesses grew around her farms, transport, feed, supply markets. And yet one shadow remained. Uncle Kwesi. He aged faster than Amara expected. Years of bitterness had carved deep lines into his face. His authority faded as people gravitated toward the woman he once tried to break. One afternoon, as Amara walked through the village market, she saw him sitting alone under a tree. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes hollow. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the past surged between them, the threats, the cruelty, the night he told her to choose between land and her child. The crowd grew quiet, sensing something unspoken. Uncle Kwesi stood slowly. "Amara," he said, his voice weak. I was wrong." The words fell heavily into the silence. People leaned in. "I thought I was protecting tradition," he continued, shame trembling in his voice. "But I was protecting my greed." Amara's heart pounded, every wound reopened. She could destroy him with a single sentence. But she remembered something her mother once told her: power tests the heart more than poverty ever will. She stepped closer. "You tried to take what little I had," she said calmly. "You used my pain against me." He nodded, tears forming. "I know." A long pause followed. "I forgive you," Amara said finally. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "But forgiveness does not mean forgetting," she added gently. "And it does not mean giving you power over my life again." Uncle Kwesi lowered his head. "Thank you," he whispered. Amara turned and walked away, her back straight. That day, the village learned a different lesson, not about wealth, but about restraint. As her influence grew, Amara began to think beyond business. She remembered the clinic, the rule that nearly cost her a child's life. She remembered girls who dropped out of school because of pregnancy, poverty, or shame. So she acted. She built a small hospital near the village, one that treated first and asked questions later. She partnered with doctors who believed in service, not just payment. No child was turned away for lack of money. Then she built a school. Not a grand building at first, just classrooms, teachers, and books. She named a scholarship program after her mother, honoring the woman who taught her the value of education when nothing else was guaranteed. At the launch ceremony, Amara stood before the crowd, Ada and Zainab by her side. "No girl should be mocked into silence," she said. "No child should be denied a future because of hardship." The applause was long and sincere. Ada and Zainab were no longer just friends. Amara made them directors in her foundation, trusting the women who stood with her when she had nothing. Nnamdi Achebe remained a quiet presence in her life. He never claimed credit, never asked for praise. When people called him her benefactor, he corrected them. "She built this," he said simply. "I only opened a door." One evening, as Amara sat on her balcony watching the sunset, Nnamdi's mother joined her. "You carry your success with humility," the old woman observed. "Not everyone does." Amara smiled. "I know how quickly it can disappear." The woman nodded. "Then you will never lose it." As darkness settled, Amara reflected on her journey. She had known hunger. She had known shame. She had known betrayal and cruelty. But she had also known kindness, integrity, and the quiet power of doing what was right when no one was watching. She realized then that becoming powerful was not the hardest part. Remaining human was. And she was determined to do both. Amara did not wake up one morning and decide to conquer the city. The city came to her. It began quietly, the way all lasting changes do. A buyer from the outskirts mentioned her eggs to a friend in the city. That friend mentioned them to a distributor. The distributor placed a cautious order, then doubled it the following week. Soon the narrow road leading to Amara's farms grew busy with vans and trucks she did not recognize. Drivers asked for her by name. They spoke of contracts, delivery schedules, quality standards. Words that once belonged to another world now filled her days. At first, the scale frightened her. City buyers were different. They were strict, impatient, and unforgiving of mistakes. Late deliveries meant canceled deals. Poor packaging meant rejection. One error could undo years of trust. Amara felt the familiar tightening in her chest. "What if this is too much?" she asked Ada one evening as they reviewed figures under the glow of a desk lamp. "What if I fail at this level?" Ada met her gaze steadily. "You didn't come this far by accident," Zainab added softly. "You've always learned before you leaped. Do the same now." So Amara learned. She hired logistics consultants to redesign her supply chain. She invested in cold storage facilities to preserve freshness. She trained supervisors to manage operations when she could not be everywhere at once. She studied contracts late into the night, refusing to sign anything she did not fully understand. When banks offered loans with hidden traps, she declined. When politicians suggested partnerships that required silence in exchange for favors, she refused. Her name began appearing in business circles. The woman farmer from the East. The one who built everything from nothing. The one who won't bend. Journalists came next. They arrived with cameras and notebooks, curious about the story behind the numbers. They expected glamour. They found simplicity. They asked about profit margins. She spoke about discipline. They asked about power. She spoke about responsibility. One headline caught the public's attention. From rejected teen mother to agribusiness leader. The Amara story. The village watched in disbelief as Amara appeared on television screens across the country. The same girl they once laughed at now spoke calmly about national food security, women in agriculture, and ethical business practices. Kofi and Kojo sat on the floor in front of the television, their eyes wide. "That's you," Mama Kofi whispered. Amara smiled and pulled them close. Yes. And one day that will be you too if you choose to work for it. With visibility came pressure. Demand skyrocketed. Orders flooded in faster than her current operations could support. The temptation to overpromise loomed dangerously close. Instead of rushing, Amara paused. She gathered her leadership team, men and women who had grown with her, and spoke plainly. "We will expand," she said. "But we will not break what we've built." They expanded region by region, farm by farm, system by system. New facilities rose across multiple states. Feed mills followed, veterinary partnerships formed, transportation fleets multiplied. Each move was calculated, documented, and audited. By the 10th year, Amara's operations employed thousands. Her company became one of the largest producers of eggs and poultry products in the region. Revenue climbed into figures people whispered about in disbelief, but money was never her loudest achievement. Her foundation grew alongside her business. The hospital expanded, adding maternity wards and emergency units. The school increased enrollment, its graduates earning scholarships to universities once thought unreachable. Young girls who might have disappeared into early marriage or poverty now stood confidently in classrooms, their futures unfolding with possibility. At an annual foundation event, Amara stood on stage beside Kofi and Kojo, now tall, confident young men. "This is not charity," she told the audience. "This is justice." The applause thundered. Behind the scenes, Namdi watched quietly, pride softening his features. "You have surpassed every expectation," he told her later. Amara shook her head. "I am still running." As her influence spread beyond agriculture, investors approached with proposals in energy, real estate, and manufacturing. Each opportunity was examined carefully. She entered real estate strategically, building affordable housing near industrial zones to ensure workers lived with dignity. She invested in processing plants to add value locally rather than exporting raw products. Her company transformed from a farming enterprise into a diversified group. Economists began citing her model in conferences. Universities invited her to speak. Governments consulted her on food policy. And then came the announcement that shook the nation. A financial publication released its annual ranking. Amara's name stood at the top. She was officially recognized as the first female billionaire to emerge from her city. The news exploded. Messages flooded in. Calls came non-stop. Celebrations erupted in places she had never visited. Back in the village, elders gathered in silence. The stream where she was once mocked flowed as it always had. But the girl who struggled there no longer needed to come. On the day of the public recognition ceremony, Amara stood on a grand stage in the Capitol, lights blazing, cameras flashing. She wore simple attire, elegant but restrained. When handed the microphone, she paused. The hall quieted. "I was 17 when I became a mother," she began. "And I was rejected." The room held its breath. They said my life was over, that I was finished. But integrity finished what poverty started, and hope finished the rest. She spoke of the wallet, the choice, the door that opened because she did the right thing when no one was watching. "Success is not built on shortcuts," she concluded. "It is built on decisions, small, honest decisions made consistently over time." The standing ovation lasted minutes. Later that night, Amara returned home, not to a mansion, but to the place that grounded her. She sat with her sons under the open sky, the stars spread wide above them. "We did it," Kojo said softly. Amara smiled, her eyes reflecting starlight. "No," she replied. "We're still doing it." The journey that began with shame had become a force that reshaped cities. And still Amara remained rooted in the truth that saved her life. Integrity first, always. Wealth changed Amara's environment, but it did not change her priorities. Long after the headlines faded and the applause quieted, she remained a mother first. Every decision she made, every expansion, every partnership, every public appearance was filtered through one question she asked herself repeatedly. What kind of world will my sons inherit, and what kind of men will they become in it? Kofi and Kojo were no longer boys chasing chickens around a dusty compound. They had grown tall, confident, and thoughtful, shaped not by privilege alone, but by the story they carried in their blood. Amara made sure they never forgot where they came from. She did not hide her past. On quiet evenings, she sat with them on the balcony of their home, the city lights stretching endlessly below, and told them stories not of success but of struggle. She told them about the stream, about the laughter, the whispers, the way people stepped aside as if she carried shame like a disease. She described the weight of the water on her head, the ache in her arms, the fear of falling with no one to catch her. Kofi listened in silence, his jaw tightening. Kojo asked questions. Didn't you hate them? Mama Amara shook her head slowly. I hated what they represented: fear, ignorance, cruelty, but hatred is heavy. I had already carried too much. She told them about the clinic, about the doctor who refused treatment without money, about the night she thought she would lose one of them. Her voice trembled then, but she did not stop. That day, she said softly, I learned that systems can be more dangerous than people. Her sons never interrupted. Then she told them about the wallet, how it felt in her hands, how easily it could have erased her problems, how one choice, quiet, unseen, became the foundation of everything they now had. Integrity, she told them, is doing the right thing even when it costs you, especially when it costs you. Kofi finally spoke. If you had kept it, would we still be here? Amara smiled sadly. We might be rich, she said, but we would not be whole. She raised her sons deliberately. They attended the best schools, but she insisted they volunteer during holidays, at hospitals, schools, and farms. She wanted them to understand service, not entitlement. She wanted them to see people as humans, not as numbers. When Kojo once complained about a delayed delivery affecting his comfort, Amara corrected him immediately. Someone worked to make that happen, she said firmly. Never disrespect effort because it inconveniences you. As young men, Kofi gravitated toward medicine, drawn by the memory of that clinic and the injustice that nearly cost him his life. Kojo leaned toward economics and public policy, fascinated by systems and how they could either trap or free entire communities. Amara supported both, but she warned them. Knowledge without character is dangerous, she said, and power without empathy destroys. While her sons prepared for their futures, Amara began thinking seriously about succession. She had built an empire, but empires without purpose collapse. She did not want her work to end with her name. So she structured her businesses carefully, separating ownership from management, building boards that valued ethics over loyalty, and embedding social responsibility into every division. Her foundation became legally protected, its mission clearly defined, its funding guaranteed regardless of market fluctuations. She wanted permanence. Back in the village, change continued to ripple outward. The stream was no longer a place of mockery. It became a symbol. Young girls fetched water there now with laughter instead of fear. Some wore school uniforms. Others talked openly about their dreams, becoming engineers, teachers, entrepreneurs. They spoke Amara's name freely. She was like us, they said. If she could rise, so can we. The elders noticed too. At a community meeting one evening, an old man stood and spoke quietly. We failed her, he admitted. But she did not fail us. No one argued. Uncle Kwesi did not attend. He lived quietly now, his influence gone, his authority replaced by memory. Amara never spoke of him publicly again. Forgiveness had closed that chapter. Silence sealed it. Years passed. Amara's company expanded beyond national borders. International partnerships formed. Her story appeared in textbooks and case studies. Students analyzed her decisions, her risk management, her refusal to compromise. But when people asked her about success, she always returned to the same point. "I didn't build this by being exceptional," she said. "I built it by being consistent." On the 20th anniversary of her first poultry house, Amara returned to the land by the stream. It looked different now. Paved roads, greenhouses, clean water points. The air carried the hum of productivity rather than desperation. She walked slowly, memories rising with each step. Here was the path she once walked barefoot. Here was the place she almost lost everything. Kofi and Kojo stood beside her. "Why did you bring us here?" Kojo asked. Amara looked out over the land. "Because this is where it started," she said. "And one day this will be where you start something of your own." Kofi nodded thoughtfully. "We won't waste it," she smiled. "I know." As the sun dipped low, painting the land in gold, Amara felt a quiet peace settle in her chest. Not pride, not triumph, completion. She had not only changed her life, she had changed the story people told themselves about what was possible. And as she turned to walk away from the stream, no longer burdened, no longer alone, she knew that the greatest legacy she would leave behind was not measured in money. It was measured in courage passed from one generation to the next. By the time Amara's name became synonymous with success, something else had quietly happened. Fear had changed sides. Years earlier, she had lived in constant vigilance, watching doors, watching faces, watching hunger creep toward her children. Every step forward felt fragile, as if the ground beneath her could collapse without warning. Now it was the past that watched her. Uncle Kwesi felt it most deeply. He saw the signs everywhere. On the billboards announcing agricultural initiatives backed by Amara's company. On the new roads leading out of the village built to support logistics for her farms. On the faces of young men and women walking confidently to work each morning, people who once stood idle, dependent on his influence. His power had evaporated, and nothing frightened him more than irrelevance. One evening, as Amara prepared to leave the city for the village where a new community center funded by her foundation was set to open, her assistant hesitated before handing her a note. "Someone asked to see you," he said carefully. He insisted. Amara glanced at the name and felt a familiar stillness settle over her. "Kwesi." She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. "Let him come." He arrived an hour later, thinner than she remembered, his once commanding posture bent by time and regret. He did not sit until she gestured. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely steady. "I hear you're coming to the village tomorrow," he said. "Yes," Amara replied calmly. "I wanted to ask something." Before that, he continued. "I wanted to ask if I could speak." She studied him carefully, not with anger, not with triumph, but with clarity. "You're speaking now," she said. Kwesi swallowed. "People will be there. Elders, youth, workers, they will celebrate you. They will celebrate progress." Amara corrected. "Yes," he nodded. "And they will remember what I did." Silence stretched between them. "I was wrong," he said again, quieter than before, "but wrong does not erase what I am." "I know." Amara leaned forward slightly. "Why are you here, Kwesi?" He took a deep breath. "Because I don't want my story to end as a warning whispered behind doors. I want to say it publicly. I want to admit it." For a moment, Amara said nothing. She remembered the night Kojo burned with fever, the cold voice demanding payment, the conditions spoken without mercy, the way she had screamed as he turned away. Power surged through her memory like heat. Then it settled. "You can speak," she said finally, "but you will not speak for forgiveness. You will speak for truth." Kwesi nodded, tears forming. "That is all I ask." The next day, the village gathered under a wide canopy near the stream. The transformation was unmistakable. Where once there had been cracked earth and murmurs of gossip, there were paved walkways, clean water stations, and a crowd buzzing with anticipation. Children laughed openly, women stood proudly. Men wore expressions of respect that had been earned, not demanded. Amara arrived quietly accompanied by Kofi and Kojo. When she stepped onto the platform, the applause rose like a wave. She waited for it to settle before speaking. This place, she began gesturing toward the stream behind her, is where many of you first saw me struggle. The crowd grew silent. I was 17. I carried water here with 2 babies and no protection from your words. Some of you helped me. Many of you mocked me. All of you watched. She paused, letting the truth sit without accusation. But today, she continued, this place stands as proof that beginnings do not define endings. The crowd erupted again, but she raised her hand gently. There is one more voice that must be heard, she said. Because progress without honesty is fragile. She turned. Kwesi. A ripple moved through the audience as he stepped forward. Kwesi stood trembling, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He looked out at the faces that once obeyed him, feared him, believed him. I used tradition as a weapon, he said, his voice breaking. I saw a vulnerable girl and tried to take what little she had left. I tried to trade land for life. Gasps spread through the crowd. I was wrong, he continued, and I am responsible for pain that cannot be undone. He turned toward Amara. You could have destroyed me, he said. Instead, you let me live with the truth. He bowed his head. I accept whatever judgment remains, he finished quietly. The silence that followed was heavy but not hostile. Amara stepped forward. We do not build the future by pretending the past never happened, she said. We build it by telling the truth and choosing differently. She looked at Kwesi one last time. Your words are recorded. Your power ends here. Then she turned back to the crowd. This center, she continued, will provide skills training, legal education, and health care access. Not as charity, but as protection. No one here should ever be forced to choose between dignity and survival again. The applause that followed was thunderous. As the ceremony ended, elders approached Amara one by one, offering blessings. Young women gathered near the platform, their eyes bright with belief. Workers returned to their stations with renewed pride, and Kwesi walked away quietly, lighter and smaller than he had ever been. That evening, as the sun sank low, Amara stood with her sons at the edge of the stream. Do you feel relief? Kojo asked. Amara considered the question. I feel closure, she said. Kofi nodded. What happens now? Now, she replied, we keep building, because the true test of power was never reaching the top. It was what one chose to do after standing there. The day the world officially named Amara a billionaire did not feel like a victory parade to her. There were no fireworks in her heart, no rush of triumph. Instead, there was a quiet stillness, deep grounding, almost sacred. She sat alone in her study that evening, long after the calls, the messages, and the congratulations had slowed. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars fallen to earth. On her desk lay a single framed photograph. It showed a young woman barefoot standing by a village stream. A baby tied to her back, another in her arms. Her face was thin, her eyes tired but determined. Amara stared at it for a long time. That girl, she whispered, did not know she would come this far. Yet everything she had become was born from who that girl chose to be. Kofi and Kojo entered quietly, now tall young men with confident posture and clear eyes. They no longer needed to ask permission to enter rooms. The world opened doors for them automatically. But Amara had trained them never to walk through those doors blindly. Mama Kofi said gently, "They're calling you the first billionaire our city has ever produced." Kojo smiled. "They're saying your name will be written in history books." Amara smiled faintly and motioned for them to sit. Do you know why that matters? She asked. Kojo thought for a moment. Because it means success, no, Amara replied calmly. Because it means responsibility. She leaned forward. This city didn't need another rich person, she continued. It needed proof. Proof that dignity can survive poverty. Proof that a woman, especially a young rejected woman, can rise without selling her soul. The next weeks were filled with ceremonies. Government officials invited her to speak. International organizations requested partnerships. Universities awarded honorary degrees. Headlines repeated her story in different languages, all trying to capture the same transformation. But the moment that mattered most to Amara happened far from cameras. It happened back in the village. She returned quietly one morning without convoy or announcement. The stream flowed gently just as it always had. Women fetched water. Children played nearby. Life continued. A young girl stood at the edge, struggling to lift a heavy container. Amara watched silently. Then, just as she once had, two other girls ran to help. Amara closed her eyes. The cycle had changed. Later that day, the village gathered not because they were summoned, but because they wanted to be there. Elders sat in front. Women stood proudly. Youth filled the open space with energy and curiosity. Amara stood before them dressed simply. I am not here today as a billionaire, she began. I am here as one of you. The crowd quieted. This community once saw me as a warning, she continued. Today you call me a success. But the truth is this: nothing about my life changed overnight. She spoke of hunger, of shame, of standing alone against tradition twisted by greed. She spoke of the wallet not as a miracle but as a test. One choice, she said, can become a foundation, or it can become a prison. She announced new initiatives that day: a women's land protection program to prevent forced seizures, a legal fund for young mothers facing exploitation, expansion of scholarships under her mother's name, new clinics along rural paths so no child would ever be turned away for lack of money again. This time the applause was not loud, it was reverent. In the years that followed, Amara's influence spread beyond business. She advised governments on ethical development. She helped draft policies protecting women entrepreneurs. She invested in industries that created jobs, not dependency. Her wealth grew, but always with structure, transparency, and purpose. Economists studied her model. Sociologists analyzed her impact. Journalists tried to define her power. But Amara defined herself simply. I am a steward, she said often. Nothing more. At home, life remained grounded. Kofi completed his medical training and returned to oversee the hospitals built under his mother's foundation. Kojo entered public policy, working to reform systems that once trapped families like theirs. One evening, the three of them sat together under the open sky, the same stars shining above them as had shone on Amara years ago when she cried alone beside her children. Mama Kojo said softly, "If you could go back, would you change anything?" Amara considered the question carefully. No, she said at last, because every wound taught me how to heal others. Years later, when Amara finally stepped back from daily operations, her legacy was undeniable. Her companies employed tens of thousands. Her foundations had educated generations. Her city had transformed economically, socially, morally. And her story had become more than a tale of riches. It had become a lesson that beginnings do not define endings, that integrity can outgrow poverty, that a woman's worth is not erased by circumstance, and that the greatest wealth is not what one accumulates but what one changes. On the anniversary of her mother's death, Amara returned once more to the stream. She stood there quietly, no cameras, no entourage. Just her and the sound of flowing water. Thank you, she whispered to her mother, to her younger self, to the strength that carried her through nights of despair. Then she turned and walked away. Her steps light her back unburdened, because the girl who was once mocked had not only become the pride of her people, she had become their proof. Amara's journey reminds us that life does not judge us by where we start, but by the choices we make when no one is watching. She was young, rejected, and burdened with responsibilities that would have broken many people. Yet what truly changed her destiny was not luck, wealth, or sudden rescue. It was integrity. In her darkest moment, when keeping what did not belong to her could have eased her suffering, she chose honesty. That single decision became the seed from which everything else grew. This story teaches us that hardship is not proof of failure. Poverty is not a verdict. Shame imposed by society is often built on fear and ignorance, not truth. Amara did not rise because the world suddenly became kind. She rose because she refused to let bitterness, desperation, or revenge define her. She worked patiently, learned humbly, forgave wisely, and built responsibly. And when power finally came into her hands, she used it not to dominate others, but to protect, uplift, and restore dignity. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is this: the choices that feel smallest are often the ones that shape our future the most. Doing the right thing may not reward you immediately, but it builds a foundation that nothing can destroy. Your present situation is not your final chapter. With courage, consistency, and character, your story can still change. What part of Amara's journey touched you the most? Share your thoughts and lessons in the comments. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more powerful stories like this. And if you believe someone else needs to hear this message today, share it with them.